The Mega Dungeon, Dawn of the Infinite, has been split into 2 separate and plus keys for Dragonflight Season 3. My name is Naguura, and in this video I will go over the most important mechanics to watch out for in Murozond's Rise. This instance contains the last 4 bosses of the Mega Dungeon, and it's one of the longer keys this season with a timer of 35 minutes. The dungeon's entrance is located in the temporal conflux in Teldrassus. You start off on the first boss's platform. You have to deal with the 3 named mobs channeling into the Oath Stone before you can engage Tyr, the Infinite Keeper. Before I explain the mini-bosses, let's talk about the normal trash mobs you will encounter on this platform. The Vanguards cast a frontal bleed that follows the tank, so be careful about positioning here. The mages cast Epoch Bolt on the tank, dealing magic damage, and occasionally Corroding Volley. This should be interrupted because it does initial damage to the whole group and leaves behind a magic debuff that slows. One of the 3 mini-bosses is Keeper Valo. He creates swirlies underneath each player's location occasionally and also spawns a bubble around him, reducing damage taken by mobs standing within it by 50%. This buff also applies to players, so you can move into the bubble for a nice damage reduction. Here we are following Golden Guardians pulling all 3 mini-bosses, but these can also be tackled one at a time. Another mini-boss is Maiden Lyrae. She casts an unavoidable AoE once in a while, and she sends out an orb towards a random player, stunning and dealing damage to anyone in the orb's path. This orb returns to the Maiden's snapshotted position she was in when she finished the cast. The last mini-boss is Sentinel Spurlock. His main ability is a charge towards a random player, spawning a shroud on his end location. He will then stand within his own shroud and starts pulling a player towards him. This channel stuns the targeted player and has to be stopped by someone stepping into the shroud and interrupting the mini-boss. Once all the mini-bosses are dead, Keeper Tyr spawns. Tyr has 2 kinds of frontals. Satanic Blow is a cone towards the tank's location, leaving behind consecrated ground. This ability also knocks back the tank, so be careful to not fall off. And Infinite Annihilation is a frontal cone towards a random player, leaving behind consecrated ground as well. He also casts Dividing Strike, which is a split damage ability circle spawning close to the boss. At least 2 players have to soak the circle, otherwise the boss gets a damage increase for the rest of the fight, stacking up. Tyr also applies 2 magic debuffs to random non-tank players. The debuff does ticking damage to the player and anyone standing within the circle around the players. Additionally, it also does AoE damage to the group on removal. This means you want to stagger the dispels of the debuffs to make sure players have enough time to recover their health in between. Once Tyr is out of energy, he shields himself and channels into the Oath Stone in the middle of the room. During this time, orbs will spawn around the room and move towards the middle. Players can intercept the orbs to gain a haste buff, stacking up to 5 for 50% haste in total. If orbs reach the Oath Stone, they will increase the absorption amount of Tyr's shield, do AoE damage to the group, and also push players back. Once he finishes his cast, he continues with his normal abilities. Leave the middle of the room as free of consecrated ground as possible to make sure you can soak all the orbs properly. Next up, you have to deal with a Timeline Marauder and an Infinite Watchkeeper. Both of the mobs have a non-interruptible AoE damage channel, which can be deadly if it overlaps, so make sure you are ready to use big defensive cooldowns here. Make sure to interrupt Displaced Chrono sequence from the Marauder, otherwise they gain a shield. Once you finish off the mobs, the door opens and you will need at least 1 player to make it through the maze to unlock the portal. It can be pretty tricky to get through the maze, but I've noticed it gets easier if 2 players move simultaneously on opposite sides, to bait the abilities away from each other. The more players make it through, the faster you can open the portal for everyone else. Once everyone is through, you have to deal with 2 Proto-Dragons, an Infinite Saboteur and an Infinite Diversionist. I recommend focusing the Diversionist because of the same AoE damage channel the previous dragon casted. The second dragon isn't too scary, just casting a frontal towards the tank dealing magic damage. After the dragons are dead, the barrier dissolves and you can enter the portal room. To open the portals, you'll have to kill all of the Rift Mages in this area. The Deviations and Fusions continue to spawn and don't do much other than tank damage, and a small AoE explosion on death. They do remove the paddles on the floor wherever you kill them. Infinite Rift Mages cast Infinite Burn on random targets, leaving behind a magic dot if not interrupted or dispelled, also slowing movement speed. Additionally, they cast Temporal Blast on the tank, dealing magic damage. Once you finish off the Rift Mages, you can enter the portal to either Morchie or Time Lost Battlefield. If you decide to do Morchie first, take the right portal. The infinite time benders have portals nearby they activate once you engage them. They spawn a few different murlocs out of the portals with simple mechanics. Once in a while the time bender shields a murloc, and this shield absorbs damage and pulses AoE damage around them. Additionally, the time bender also casts Dizzying Sand, disorienting players if not interrupted, so make sure you do so. Now you can fight Morchie. One of her main abilities is More Problems. The boss disappears and spawns multiple mirror images of herself in a circle around the room. You then have to find the correct Morchie to be able to dodge the frontal breath she is casting from her real position. The real Morchie is the NPC without any headgear, just her blue hair. Another one of her signature abilities is Familiar Faces, where she spawns mirror images for every player. The images then fixate on each player, radiate AoE damage in a circle around them, and melee attack if they reach their target. You can CC the image with most slows and stuns, but the way you're supposed to deal with them is by kiting them into time traps Morchie spawns. If an image enters a trap, they will get disabled until she recasts the ability. But they also explode for group damage when they enter a trap, so make sure to not kite them all into traps simultaneously, or use big defensive CDs if you do so. Other than that, tanks just need to watch out for Sandblast. It's a frontal that follows the tank's position, so don't aim it into the middle of the room. You now have to go to the other portal to defeat Timeless Battlefield. On their way to the boss's platform, there's a swarm of pendules flying over the platform. If you engage them, they cast Time Beam onto random players. Make sure to interrupt this as much as possible. To start the next boss fight, you will have to clear a trash event in the boss room. This event will look different and the mobs will have different names depending on which faction the group leader is. But the abilities do the same thing. For the sake of this guide, I will be going with the Horde names. The Horde Destroyer will occasionally spawn zappers that fixate on players and detonate if they reach their target. Make sure to CC them and don't get hit. Additionally, the boss also throws bombs and swirlies at a player marked with a red arrow. If this ability is on you, make sure to keep on moving. Once the Destroyer is dead, you will have to deal with a Farseer and 2 Raiders. The Farseer casts Earthquake, so make sure you move the mobs out of that, and Healing Wave, which is a heal that can be interrupted. The Raiders cast Rallying Shout, make sure to interrupt that one too. Now to the boss, Romish Hellscream. There will be multiple friendly and targetable NPCs in the room, and any AoE boss ability that hits them will kill them and give the boss a stacking buff called Thirst for Battle, doing AoE damage to the group on successful melee attacks. One of the boss's abilities is Shockwave, targeting 3 random players after another with a frontal cone. Make sure to not bait the cone towards NPCs if possible to avoid stacking up Thirst for Battle. Additionally, the boss also casts Blade Storm, jumping onto a random player and chasing after them while doing AoE damage around him. Again, make sure to not kill off too many NPCs with this ability. The boss also spawns some ads once in a while. Make sure to deal with them as fast as you can so you don't get overwhelmed. After defeating both Morchie and Timeless Battlefield, you can access the portal to Chrono-Lord Deios. But first you have to deal with a pretty nasty trash pack with 2 Marauders and an Infinite Slayer. All 3 mobs have an unavoidable AoE damage channel, so make sure to coordinate defensive CDs and healing CDs properly for the first few AoE casts, and maybe focusing them one by one to reduce incoming damage might be a good idea. Now you can start the fight against Chrono-Lord Deios. He has 2 abilities he keeps throughout the whole fight. One is a Frontal Breath, and the other one is Infinity Orb. 2 orbs will spawn in the room, which fall to the ground and explode for AoE damage, leaving behind a 4-second debuff on everyone, increasing subsequent damage of the same ability by 300%. To deal with this mechanic, let 1 orb fall to the ground and have another player stand beneath the second orb to slow down its descent. Assigning 1 designated orb soaker beforehand makes sense, so this player always knows to stand underneath an orb while all the other players move away. Additionally, the boss also spawns Infinite Keepers in phase 1. They run towards the side and start summoning ads from a portal. Kill these ads quickly to stop the summoning. Each keeper removes 20% health of the boss too, so once you defeat all 4 keepers, the boss goes into phase 2. In phase 2, he will continue to cast his Frontal Breath and the Infinity Orbs. On top of that, he also spawns puddles around the room, reducing the space you can use over time, so make sure to not get cut off from your group and move together until you defeat the boss. We hope you have enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other Mythic Plus guides. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in Season 3.